Here's the question for you. Should you take this knight? Yes or no? Pause the video and figure the answer out. Should you take the knight? Yes or no? You're going to learn 9 principles that you can apply to your games today to start winning more endgames. This is game number 1 in a series where I'm going to be going through this book, Capablanca's Best Chess Endgames. Capablanca is considered by many to be the greatest endgame player of all time. The game that you're about to see, he played when he was only 12 years old. It features a bishop against a knight, which is a very common dynamic in chess. And if you understand some of the key things you're going to learn here, it's going to go a long way for you. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this game, and let's learn how to win some endgames. By the way, I'm going to link this book in the description. If you would like to pick it up from Amazon, you can follow along, but you don't need it. I'm going to cover everything in the videos right here on YouTube. All right, now before we get to this position, I want to show you the entire game very quickly leading up to that position, just so you can see how we ended up in the endgame to begin with. So Capablanca is playing with white. He plays d4 and he faces the Dutch defense. Very aggressive response from black, although it does come with some weaknesses to the king. And Capablanca responds with e4, the Staunton gambit. I love this approach, very aggressive, and he's trying to immediately make black pay for playing such an aggressive opening. Black captures, knight to c3. Knight to f6. The knight on f6 is usually a very good defender of this diagonal. And so Capablanca immediately attacks it. And as an example, if black's not paying attention and plays something like d5, do you guys see how Capablanca could respond here? I'll go ahead and turn the eval bar on. You can see it's a slight advantage for white. Well, he would just take the knight, followed by queen h5 check, and then he would pick up the pawn. And actually, white's position is very good. This is under attack, which is a fork. This is under attack, which is undefended and also a fork. This is a weak pawn. Black has too many things to deal with. They're already kind of falling apart. Okay, just an example. So black doesn't fall for that. They play c6. We get a trade. And now black plays the move queen e7 check, and Capablanca plays queen e2. Now, he was, like I said, he was only 12 years old when he played this game, but he was already very, very good at endgames and did not shy away from going into an endgame. He's like, oh, you want to trade queens? Like, yeah, let's trade queens, right? He's very happy to do that. Get the trade, and then a bunch more pieces get traded off, and you'll notice there's only one open file on the board for the rooks. Usually when that happens, you might get a lot of rook trades, which is exactly what we have. And here we are. This is now the knight versus bishop endgame. This brings us to principle number 1. Endgames are not as drawish as you might think. Okay, if you've watched a lot of grandmaster high-level games, you might notice that lots of grandmasters go into an endgame like this and it'll be a draw. But for 99% of the people watching this video, that is not going to apply to you. Your games are much more likely to end in a win or a loss than a draw. Why is that? Because somebody's going to make a mistake somewhere along the way because they don't know the principles that you're going to know from watching this video, okay? So please remember, endgames are not nearly as drawish as you think they are, and we're going to see exactly how Capablanca approaches this with the bishop to ultimately get the victory. All right, now before I go on and show you the game, the second principle that I want to talk about is knights against bishops, and it's this. Bishops are better than knights in the hand of a strong player in most cases. So what Capablanca said was that beginners tend to be afraid of knights and think that knights are more valuable. But as you get better and better and better, strong players understand that the bishops are extremely valuable and are usually better than the knights. And we are going to see exactly why throughout the rest of this game. Okay, so that's principle number 2. Bishops generally are better than knights in the hands of a strong player. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Capablanca's opponent plays knight to f6. And Capablanca plays king to d2. Now, this brings us to principle number 3, which is in the end game, you must activate your king as quickly as possible to the most effective square. So king d2 is a very nice move because he's giving himself options. He can run this way if he wants and infiltrate over here. He can also run this way and infiltrate over here. You don't know, right? He's giving himself the option to go either way, which is the smart thing to do, right? He doesn't commit right now and only go this way. He goes towards the center, and then he will decide based on what happens in the rest of the game, okay? Check. He plays king e3, and I have a question for you guys. Did Capablanca blunder the pawn on g3 or not? All right, if you had a chance to look at that, obviously the eval bar is saying it's equal, so it must not be a blunder, but why not? Because it looks like a free pawn, right? King f4 forks the pieces. Okay, great. But wait a second. For those of you paying attention, you might have noticed this move knight to f1. And after the king takes, knight to e3 is a fork. And there's that pesky knight, which is about to gobble up the pawn. What's going on? Let me back up. What Capablanca had planned was not to take the pawn. He was going to play bishop e2 first, an in-between move, force the knight to move somewhere, and only then take the pawn. The knight no longer has a fork. And what has happened in the position? After all of that stuff happened, notice Capablanca's king is now all the way up the board on the 5th rank, and its opponent's king is not even moved. So going back to the principle of activating the king, Capablanca's king is ready to basically just win the game. He's going to come in and he's going to start hunting these pawns. Very bad news for black, okay? And so black wisely does not do that and instead just retreats the knight and the game goes on, okay? All right, so Capablanca plays bishop e2. He brings his king. And you'll notice black is now threatening to play g5 check and force his king backwards. And Capablanca says, no, thank you. I'm going to play h4. I want to make sure my king can stay in a very active square. g6, g4. Oh, by the way, I should point this out. If black were to play h6, threatening to play g5, what should you do? Well, you should play the move h5. Very powerful move, and you need to remember this concept. Because of the move en passant, the special move in chess where if a pawn pushes 2 spaces, you can still capture it, and you can pretend like it only moved 1, okay? That's very, very useful in a situation like this where you don't want to allow them to force your king away. But he was threatening to do it. He's about to go there. If you play any other random move, he's going to play g5, and guess what? Now you have to go backwards. The only way to stop that in this position is to play h5. They can no longer go there because of the en passant special move, and now you've weakened their pawns, and your king gets to stay in a nice position, okay? So that's what he was going to play against h6. The opponent played g6 instead, all right? g4, he pushes. He's trying to force the black king out of that square, which he does. The king moves here. Capablanca now plays g4, and we're going to see why. He's doing something very important, which we're going to talk about in just a second. Captures, and he doesn't take back. He plays bishop d3, hunting this pawn. Because if he can get this pawn, he's going to have a passed pawn, which we're going to talk more about in just a second. All right. Crucial moment in the game. I'm going to turn off the eval bar here for a second. Okay, so the eval bar is on. I'm going to turn it off. And I want you guys to imagine that you are playing this game as white, and your opponent plays the move knight to f5. You capture this pawn, and they play king e6. Here's the question for you. Should you take this knight? Yes or no? Pause the video and figure the answer out. Should you take the knight? Yes or no? All right, if you had a chance to look at that, this brings us to principle number 4, which is Zugzwang is very, very useful in the endgame. Now, if you've never heard that word before, it's a special concept where your opponent is essentially stuck in a bad position and they're forced to make a bad move, and then you win the game. If that doesn't make any sense, just hang with me. So the answer to the question, should you take the knight, is yes. You should absolutely take the knight, because when the dust settles, your king slides over, you are now in what's called Zugzwang. And essentially, actually, technically, you're not in Zugzwang just yet, but you're going to be in a few moves. So let me explain what's going on. It looks very similar. A king and a pawn, right? It's not, right? This is the key to the position right here. My king is attacking black's pawn, which is defended by black's king. His king is not attacking my pawn, and it can't. It can't get there. It has to come around, but as soon as it leaves, we just take the pawn, right? So black's king is essentially stuck. If the king ever tries to move anywhere, we just get a free pawn. Why does this matter? Because eventually we are going to force black to run out of moves. Like once these pawns run out of moves, what are they going to do? There's nothing that they can do. And guess what? That's when our king is going to capture. As an example, let's say they push a pawn, we push a pawn. Let's say they push a pawn, we push a pawn. Let's say they push a pawn, we push a pawn. Let's say they take, we take. They can't push here, we're just going to take it. This guy is stuck. Uh-oh. The king now has to move. They are in Zugzwang. They're going to lose because as soon as they move anywhere, we now take the pawn. Okay, now, that's kind of a lot, But this is critical. It is critical that you understand this concept, right? Because going back here, you need to be able to see, oh yeah, if I take this, they're going to be in Zugzwang very soon, right? They're going to be forced to leave, and we're going to capture the pawn. And we don't have any danger because our pawn's not even under attack, right? You guys see the difference? It's subtle, but this is very, very important. So the answer to the question, you absolutely should take that because you would be putting them in Zugzwang once these pawns eventually get blockaded, okay? All right. Now, I want to go back, and I will put the eval bar back on for you guys. So when Capablanca played bishop d3, his opponent played knight f5, but then after this, they did not play king e6, okay, because they saw what was going to happen, and so instead, they captured the pawn on d4. Now, you will notice, when they take the pawn on d4, they are allowing Capablanca to take on g6. Is this a good trade or a bad trade for white? Giving up this pawn for this pawn, a good trade or a bad trade? Well, if you had a chance to look at that, let's bring us to principle number 5, which is that passed pawns in the endgame are a crucial resource. A crucial resource. So as a reminder, passed pawns, a pawn that cannot be stopped by another pawn on the way to becoming a queen. It doesn't matter that there's a bishop blocking it. It doesn't matter that the king can stop it. There's no pawns, right? There's no pawn here blocking it. There's no pawn here that could capture it if we tried to move. There's no pawn here. So this is a passed pawn. This is not a passed pawn because if you try to come here, it's going to get captured by a pawn. Why is that such a big deal about pawns? Because if a pawn can't stop it, what does that mean? It means a big piece has to stop it, either a knight or a bishop or a rook or a queen or a king. But guess what? We're at the end of the game. There's not very many pieces left. There's a king and there's a knight. That's it. That means one of these pieces has to stop the pawn. Otherwise, we just get a queen. We're 3 moves away. Black, on the other hand, is going to have to create their own passed pawn, which is going to take a lot more time. So this trade, to answer the original question, is very, very good for Capablanca because he has this guy that Black has to worry about. So that was very brilliant what he did, pushing those pawns and creating this situation. All right, let's keep going. C5, Black says, you know what? I better start pushing because I'm going to need to create my own passed pawn at some point. King to h5. Capablanca is so smart. He's not tempted to come over here with this king, which I think I would have been, honestly. He says, no, this guy, remember, passed pawns are a crucial resource. This guy is super important. I need my king to support it, right? And in doing so, he's going to be drawing Black's pieces over here to be forced to stop the pawn. King h6, king f8. Black's trying to create a blockade here with the king and the knight. Bishop to f5. Knight to g7, and bishop to c8. This brings us to principle number 6. Bishops can impact both sides of the board at the exact same time. You will notice this bishop is attacking on this side of the board and preventing the knight from moving on the other side of the board. This is one of the reasons why a bishop is better in the hands of a strong player because of the long range. And if they know how to use it, particularly in endgames like this where there's things happening on both sides of the board, it's going to be able to do things that a knight can never do. This knight cannot attack these pawns and stop this guy at the same time. It doesn't move that far, right? It's a short range piece. You can see the power of the bishop in this endgame. All right, so Black pushes the pawn forward to save it from getting captured. Capablanca plays g6. Black plays d4. And here I would like you to pause the video. What move do you think Capablanca played? A very important move. All right, if you had a chance to look at that, the move that he played was b3. A very good move. Why? Because if he gets careless and he says, you know what, I think I'll just bring my king around. You know, I don't really have to worry about too much. Black pushes. He brings his king in. Let me get my king in a nice position. Look at the eval bar. He is in just 2 careless moves. He's thrown away his advantage. Black plays d3. And this brings us to principle number 7. You should prevent your opponents from making their own pass pawns. Okay, we already talked about how pass pawns are so important. The next step is to prevent your opponents, because if you allow them to create their own pass pawn, guess what? Now you have to use one of your pieces to stop this guy. That's a problem. Right? That's a problem. You could put your bishop here, But this is going to have to stay stuck here now. Your bishop is now stuck. And yeah, you can try to bring your king and take it, but guess what? Black's king is going to come over and take your pawn. And now this is going to be a drawn ending. You've lost your advantage by allowing black to do that. So going back here, the critical move that Capablanca needed to play, which he did, b3. He stops black from getting the pass pawn. Because if you go here now, he just takes you. Thank you very much. There's no pass pawn, right? You say, Nelson, what if black just plays b5? And they're going to push here, right? What do? Pause the video. Think carefully. Or if you had a chance to look at that, the move is bishop to a6, right? You're going to just hunt down the pawns. Question for you guys. If black tries to push, what are you going to do? All right, I am going to go out on a limb here. Please let me know if I'm correct about this in the comments, if you fell for this. I am going to go out on a limb and say that probably 80% of the people, if not more, watching this video said, oh, if you play c4, I'll just start taking your pawns. Right? I mean, that seems logical. We're just going to take the pawns with the bishop. You can't get through. I've got enough pieces, right? Wrong. Look at this is incredible. Guys, look at this is incredible. c4. And by the way, this brings us to principle number 8, which is watch out for pawn breakthroughs. This is a losing move. This is a losing move. Look at the eval bar. What in the world? How in the world is it a losing move? Well, to understand why this is a losing move, you need to understand a concept of pawn breakthroughs, which I'm going to demonstrate right now. All right, so here's a position. It's white to play and win. But what you need to understand is that the pawns are going forward and black's king is in a much better position than our king. And if we just slide our king over, eventually we're going to lose, right? Because black's going to come up and just take all of our pawns. Okay, but the way that you can win is the concept of a pawn breakthrough. Okay, so I'm going to load this position. If you would like to pause, if you haven't seen this, go ahead and pause. How do we win if we're white? All right, if you had a chance to look at that, the move is b6. And when black takes, it doesn't matter which way they take, by the way, because it's symmetrical. You'll notice this pawn can almost get by. The problem is if we go there now, we just get captured. So what do? We push this one, and we're threatening to take and go here. But we're also luring this pawn away so that now this guy can sneak by. We're going to get a queen, and you will notice it's very important that our pawns were further advanced than black's, because black has some passed pawns too, but they're too far, right? And we're going to get a queen a lot faster. And now the queen can, of course, stop these guys, and we're going to win. This is an example of a pawn breakthrough, right? Okay, great. Now that you understand that, let's go back to the game. Black, believe it or not, black has an amazing pawn breakthrough in this position. It's d3. It's d3. They want to just take us. They just want to take us. Like if we do this, they're just going to take us and get a queen. We can't stop it because it's on the wrong color of our bishop. You say, well, that's fine. I'll just take it. Not a big deal, right? c3, pawn breakthrough. And guess what? We need our bishop to cover this square, but we can't because we can't go through our own pawns. We can't take our own pawn, and we can't go through the pawn. He just pushes. We have no way to stop this, but this is absolutely incredible, right? But it goes to illustrate you have to watch out for pawn breakthroughs because passed pawns are so critical. If there's a pawn breakthrough, you might just lose the game, okay? By the way, the book doesn't talk about this. I was just looking at this game as I was preparing, and I made this mistake myself. I was like, oh yeah, you just take this, okay? And I was like, wait, what? When I saw the eval bar jump like that, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And then I noticed d3, c3. I'm like, oh my goodness. So, how do you win? You just take here. Now there's no more pawn breakthrough. You can't go there. You can just get captured. If you take here, you just take. You've successfully stopped the passed pawns, and now white is going to win easily, and you're fine. But it just goes to show how tricky they are. Remember, endgames are usually not draws. There's lots of tricks along the way, okay? So I hope you enjoyed that little side tangent there. I thought that was absolutely amazing when I saw that. Anyway, back to the game. Capablanca played the move b3. And black at this point says, all right, king g8, I don't really have much to do. I'm just going to shuffle my king because what else can I do? I have to keep, the knight and the king guarding this to stop the pawn. So what does Capablanca do? He plays a4, just kind of, again, preventing the pawns from really moving, gaining a little bit of space. King f8, bishop g4. Notice the bishop is really just controlling all the squares that the knight could potentially go to. You can see the power of the bishop against the knight, right? So knight e8. King h7, king goes here. little bit of maneuvering. Okay. And then right here is where we get to principle number 9. You can use one of your pawns as bait. So this is very common at the end of the game when you have one kind of lone pawn off to the side. It's a pass pawn. Your opponent has to kind of guard it. If you use it as bait and sacrifice it at just the right moment, a lot of times you can end up trading that pawn for a bunch of other pawns on the other side of the board. And that is what Capablanca is basically doing at this moment in the game. He's saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go hunt these down. And yes, if black wants to, for example, they can hunt this pawn. Like you could try to defend it, but they can figure out a way to get their knight around, go like this, let's just say, and take it. But it doesn't really matter because you can trade this. Now the king is in perfect position to just hunt all the pawns, right? Ends up getting 3 black pawns. He's going to win because you sacrificed that other pawn as bait, okay? So that's essentially what Capablanca is doing. Very common idea that will win you a lot of games if you can do it at the right time, okay? So back to the game. Let me go here. Okay, this is what happened in the game. Black decided to not go for that and instead played knight e8. And then we get king c6, knight g7, king b7. He's still going here. Black decides to try to only give up one pawn and hold on to the other ones. Not a bad attempt, but it's really pretty straightforward for Capablanca. He plays king a6, bishop f3. He's just positioning his bishop in like the best square possible, right in the center where it's controlling all these things. And then when he's ready, he plays a5. Okay, and he's forcing the pawns to basically be broken up, so they're not supporting each other. And when he's ready, he plays g7 because the black knight left, and he's giving this up, but he's going to get a queen and win the game. Okay, the queen's going to be very powerful. He's going to take all the pieces and win. Beautiful game by Capablanca. I mean, if you go back to like earlier than that even, this position, this is a total draw as far as we can tell, right? But no, he creates the pass pawn, and that changes everything. And then at the right moment, he gives it up. He comes over, and now we have a winning endgame. Okay, beautiful stuff, guys. This is only game 1. There's 60 endgames in this book. I highly recommend you subscribe. Turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one. I'm going to link the next one over here somewhere. Once it's ready, you can click on that. And let me know in the comments what you think if you learned something. Thank you, guys, and I'll see you next time. As always, stay sharp, play smart, and take care.